Well, dear friends, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this week. This is our lecture, The Light of the Tetragrammaton. This is the symbolism and power of this mystical pentagram. And what we would like to do is go ahead and share with you, if you allow me here, we would like to share with you the symbols, the meaning, and the hidden content behind this flaming star. There are many people who have this star hanging in their homes. Many people wear it in their necks. They don't even know what they're wearing. So we would like to give you this right wisdom so you can see how much benefit you can get from this very powerful symbol. Now, the flaming star is not just the star. The flaming star is many things. And the symbols contained within the flaming star, they have many different meanings. It has been said that the meanings of all of these symbols and the teachings, etc., that they can be interpreted in 7 different levels of consciousness. So that is super profound. So here, notice that the flaming star, we will start by saying it is both a symbol of divine wisdom and it is also a symbol of human perfection. It is a symbol of the perfect human. And all the wisdom is captured in it and it has been given to us for centuries. This flaming star, or this blazing star, how it is known in different groups and traditions, has been present among the alchemists, the Freemasons, the ancient Gnostics, the Kabbalistics. This is the same flaming star that guided the 3 wise men out in the desert as they were seeking for that manger where the Savior of the world was born. So this star, among the alchemists, in the writings of a physician of name Heinrich Gunrath. Gunrath was a disciple of Paracelsus, and he was an alchemist. He was an esotericist. He was a hermeticist. And he says in his book, The Amphitheater of Eternal Science, the blazing star in the center of the great work is the divine illumination guiding the adept. Excuse me. So this blazing star is also a symbol of our guardian angel. It is a symbol of our innermost. It is representative of the different parts of the being itself. This image we show Eliphas Lévi, and in his book, The Dogma of the Ritual of High Magic, he says, the flaming star, which in Kabbalah represents the soul of the world, is also the sign of the Word made flesh. That word is the divine logos, the power of the word, just as has been written. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and through it all things were made. Look here in the writings of Albert Pike. Pike wrote a book titled Morals and Dogma. Those of you familiar with Freemasonry, this may be very familiar to you. He writes, the blazing star in our lodges represents the divine light, the Shekinah glory, or the glory of Shekinah, and is the manifestation of the eternal principle of truth. This statement we found very interesting because it so happens that Shekinah is the manifestation of God in the 9th sphere. And the 9th sphere, being the sphere of Yesod in the tree of life, is the ethereal plane. So that glory of Shekinah is the manifestation of God at the level of creation, particularly in our microcosmic representation at the level of the creative waters. And Samael Aun Weor, in his book, The Perfect Matrimony, he states, the flaming star is the blazing symbol of divine omnipotence, the ineffable sign of the Logos, the power of the Christ within us. So across all the traditions, this has always been there. But we owe it to this man, Eliphas Lévi, who is known as the Magus of the 19th century, to pretty much take it upon himself and revolutionize, redefine the Western esotericism. Levi wrote several books, but in his book, The Dogma and Ritual of High Magic, we find his rendition of this flaming star. And this drawing of his is the one that has been the most influential and the one that is the most familiar to all of us. Now, we're going to say this. We're going to share with you all of the symbols that are in the flaming star. We invite you to apprehend them, to bring them into your heart, because there are many variations of these flaming stars out there. And there are some that, even though they appear to be an instrument of light, they are engraved with stuff of darkness. Some of them, even though they appear as a symbol of light, they are missing many of the symbols. So by sharing with you this knowledge, you can be very rigorous as you look at what you're getting, so that you can make sure that if you choose to get one and consecrate it for your higher works, that you're getting the best one that you can get. Let me tell you a little bit about Levi, because Levi went from the Catholic Church into the occult. His original name was Alphonse Louis Constant, and he was originally a Catholic deacon. Actually, he briefly held the title of Abbé Constant, which was a title that was given to those who were getting themselves ready to go through a seminar to become a priest. But Levi never took his final vows. He did not become a priest. He left the church and he embraced the esoteric wisdom. As he did that, he embraced Kabbalah and Western occultism. And later on, he changed his name from Alphonse Louis to Eliphas Lévi. And that name is just a mystical Hebrew or Hebraic rendering of his name that led his transformation from being a man of religion to becoming a master of magic. So what is it that Levi gave us? This particular rendition. Many of you perhaps have seen this before and you have said, nah, I don't like that one because of the way that it kind of looks. But this is the original rendition of the flaming star that Levi gives us. And I want to bring your attention here, this moment, to the 3 T's. Because notice that the 3 T's are highlighted in a way that none of the other characters are. In addition to that T, notice that in the left hand of the star, we have a symbol that has a little slash or a little cross. This is not seen in any other pentagram that we have been able to see thus far. Okay? These 3 T's, they highlight the Tau cross. That Tau cross is a symbol entirely divine in nature because it speaks of the super dynamic of love, same as this particular marking on his left hand. For those of you who are looking at the screen, the left hand of the star is what appears to your right hand side. Okay? So in this Tetragrammaton, we find alchemical symbols, we find elements of astrology, we find the blueprint to spiritual mastery, achieving divine wisdom and receiving the Christic light. All of that is contained here. So let's go ahead and move you methodically through each one of these so that you can get a hold of understanding these particular symbols. Let's go ahead and start with this particular rendition of the flaming star. This is one of the very best that we have found. So let's go ahead and get started. We will start by highlighting the main name around the star itself. As you can see on the star, it reads Tetragrammaton. That Tetragrammaton means the 4-letter name It is the four characters that make up the name of the unmentionable, of the unpronounceable. And the word tetra means literally four. Gramma means letter or character. And ton is a Greek grammatical form that allows us to bring an end to a word. In this case, that of a neutral noun, but also showing a collective concept. So Tetragrammaton is the four-letter name of the all-encompassing, the all-knowable. In addition to these characters, we have sacred numbers at the very top of the star. On what is to your left-hand side of the star, we have the numbers 1 and 2. And to the right, we have 1, 2, and 3. The 1 and 2 refer to the absolute. The 1 speaks about the ayin, that is the unmanifested, uncreated light. That is the light that exists beyond any concept of what we have today of this thing called God. This is the light that exists from where the gods emerge. This is the light that gives of its own light to all of the gods. But that unmanifested light, at the moment of the awakening of the universe, the moment of the awakening of the great cosmic day, it unfolds upon itself. And the uncreated light, the unmanifested light perceives the uncreated space. That uncreated space, that unfoldment of the ayin is what is known as the Ein Sof. So from the unmanifested light, its projection, its unfoldment is that of the uncreated space. And when those two come together and they fuse, we see the emergence of the ray of creation. That ray of creation leads to the 1, the 2, and the 3. The 1 is the Father. Any concept of the Father that we have today. Likely that of an old man with long white hairs and a long white beard, somewhere in heaven. The 2 is the Son, and the Son is the cosmic Christ. And the 3 is the manifestation of the Holy Spirit. In the Kabbalistic tradition, Abba and Aima, the Father, Mother. But because we know that there is a principle of correspondence that shows that as above, so below, that 1 and 2 are also the crown of the tree of life, Keter. This is Chokmah, the cosmic Christ. And from them, we see the emanation of the Holy Spirit that as the source of creation results in our divine, individual, and particular Trimurti, or divine Trinity. Our own Atman, our innermost, our Buddhi, which is the spiritual soul of the innermost, and our Manas, which is the human soul of the innermost. So we see, as created above, the same is created below. The next symbol that we have is a sphere that is missing on this particular Tetragrammaton, but it's always there in the others that we have seen. That sphere is a symbol of the eternal, ineffable agnostos theos. It appears as a circle. Some people say it's an O. Some people say it's a 0. The thing is that it is a geometric figure that is just perfectly all-encompassing circular. And that agnostos theos stands at the very top of the head of this particular star. Think of Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man as it stands, and you can superimpose that on the star itself. So you can see that that particular symbol stands at the very crown of that man, and that agnostos theos is the source from where we all emerge. It is unknowable except to itself. It is the truth from moment to moment that for us it is always elusive. That particular circle repeats itself in the Tetragrammaton itself because we see it inside the microcosmic man. And the circle on the outside, well, that encloses the star, then shows the connection between the microcosmic man and the macrocosmos. It shows as one inside the other, and then again, one inside the other. That image right there at the very top of the head is representative of the atom of the Father that exists in each and every one of us. That atom exists at the base of the root of our nose. And the atom of the Father corresponds to our brain. The Father has had problems communicating because our ego, having taken control of the 300,000 or so receptors of the mind. When the Father communicates through that atom, the ego intervenes, receives that vibration, does not know what to do with it. So it misinterprets it. And so the Father needs to make use of its own manifestations to bring that wisdom to man. That circle indicates cosmic order. It indicates that within each and every one of us, there are divine laws. And again, a connection with the rest of the universe. Then we have the eyes of the Tetragrammaton. Those eyes are really a symbol of infinity. Of course, no beginning and no end. But also, that symbol of infinity exists at the very center of our planet, at the very heart of it. And it shows the actual junction between the brain and the creative force, between the brain and the sexuality. So if we were to trace that symbol of the universe, the union of that happens directly in our heart. And so it appears here as the eyes of the enlightened man, showing that the innermost is all present, that the real being is all encompassing and being omnipresent. Every action, every thought, every sentiment that we express is important. It has a consequence. And so we must live in a life of right action, right thought, and right sentiment. This eyes of the all-knowing, among the Tlamantimine, who were the wise men of the Mexica in the ancient Mexico, they used to call that Ipal Nemowani. Ipal Nemowani is he for whom we live. He that exists, whose name we cannot pronounce, mention. Like Hermes Trismegistus states in his discourse, he whose name can only be uttered by silence. Inside the flaming star, we see the characters Alpha and Omega. The all-knowing Father is, what has been, and what will be. And in the book of Revelation, it has even been written, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending, which is, and which was, and which is to come, the Almighty. So as the beginning and the end, right in between, we see that we have a series of symbols. The first one above the Omega is the caduceus of Mercury. Notice that this is presented right at the level of the creative organs of this divine man. And you are all familiar with the caduceus of Mercury because it is a symbol of medicine. But it's also a symbol of wisdom. So it is the great work that heals. It indicates about the wisdom that can take us out of our inferior condition. And the caduceus itself, notice that it has a center staff and the sphere at the very top. That right there is a symbol of the spine and the sphere is a symbol of the brain of man. That symbolizes the cerebral spinal nervous system. And we have two serpents that are entwined in that caduceus. One of them is Ob, the other one is Od, or Ida and Pingala. The book of Revelation, these are the two witnesses that stand before the throne of God. These are the two witnesses that carry that oil of olives that can transform us. So what happens within our own constitution is that Ida and Pingala, as they entwine along the spine as semi-ethereal, semi-physical channels, well, they move the solar and the lunar atoms that are contained in our creative waters. So with every breath that we take, those atoms are being separated and they flow. But it all depends on our willpower, our intentions. Where is it that we are moving our energy to see that energy routed through the right channels and achieve its intended result, or send it down incorrect channels in the body and used for the ego? We need to bring back all that energy, and rather than send it out, we need to bring it in and use it. Ob and Od, being two in nature, they are also symbols of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems. And the combination of the three, the central nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, they create in us the crystallization of the divine law of three, which is the law of the Triyamashikamno, which is exactly why we have 7 chakras. Because the 3 creates, and the creation is chaotic, and the 7, the law of Etaparaparshinok, brings order into the creation. And this caduceus also has wings. Those wings are, of course, like the wings of the angels or the archangels. These are the wings of the awakened spirit. And then we also have the symbols of the 7 cosmo creators. These cosmo creators are all archangels. And you can see them represented in specific areas of this enlightened man. Notice that we have Archangel Gabriel as a symbol of the moon. And we have Archangel Michael as a symbol of the sun at the level of the chest, as creating balance. At the very center, in the area of the heart, we have Archangel Raphael, which is the wisdom of God. And we also have Archangel Uriel, which is the love of God. Uriel has everything to do with magnetism and affinity, or love. Raphael, as the wisdom of God, has everything to do with intellect, with knowledge, wisdom, and medicine. Michael is whom like God, and Gabriel is the hero of God. On his arms, on both the left and the right, we see the symbol of Mars, and that is Archangel Samael. On his feet, we see the symbol of Saturn, and which is Archangel Orifiel, or the angel of death. And on his head, as a crown, we see the symbol of Archangel Zachariel, or Jupiter. This positioning is not deliberate, but very intentional, because these 7 archangels are the ones that help us define our personality. From the moment that we're born until the time that we're 7 years old, we are governed by the influence of Archangel Gabriel, shown here with the moon. And during those first 7 years, all of our transactions are of a maternal nature. We are nurtured by our mother. We are nurtured in a home in which we are meant to grow and, of course, develop. And for that education at the home to be the most successful, with that personality that is so tender as it is growing, well, the dynamics of the home have to be very favorable. If the dynamics are adverse, because there are conflicts in the couple, because they are situations of anger or dramas that all affects the personality of the child as the child is growing. But then between the ages of 7 and 14, we have the influence of Archangel Raphael shown here at the center of the heart in that figure that has like two little horns, a sphere, and the cross underneath. Between 7 and 14, we are under the influence of Raphael, and that is the age in which we start going to school. For real. It is there where we truly finish defining our personality. And the child is just like a dry sponge. Everything that comes to the child will learn. Good habits and bad habits, good practices, bad practices. The child will take everything, in particular at the level of the home. If the home continues to be chaotic between those ages of 7 and 14, no wonder we have young teenagers that are so rebellious. Between the ages of 14 and 21, we have the influence of Uriel. That is shown here also at the level of the heart as a sphere with a cross. Uriel is all love and affinity. So by the time that child has then reached the age of 14, he lets go of the hand of Raphael and holds onto the hand of Uriel. And so with the heavy influence of affinity and magnetism, that child starts attracting everything that corresponds to their own values. So that means that if the child who has come into this world brings many egos of anger, many of his friends will come together and they will also be rebellious and angry. If we see a child that has many egos associated to the element of pride, where there is self-love, self-consideration, etc., it's going to be surrounded by many friends that also have many of those egos. Somebody who is a leader, who is active, is going to be surrounded by the same, because everything is that energetic transaction. By the time the child becomes 21 years of age, he is under the influence of Michael. And then he lives for 21 years under that influence, between the ages of 21 to 42. And that means that it is during those years that we must set our space under the sun. Just like the sun nurtures, it brings warmth, growth, security. The same should be with our lives. We should find our vocation, be of service to others. Like the sun helps destroy some things, we must destroy what is inferior within us. And also, like the sun allows the seeds of the flowers to sprout and blossom. Well, in the same way, those seeds that exist within us, they should blossom with the virtues and faculties of the innermost. Because by the time that we get to 42, we get to the influence of Samael, and that is why Samael is in the hands of this man. Between 42 and 49, we all go through our karmas. The most challenging circumstances in our lives happen between 42 and 49 years of age. You can attest to this. Maybe you have seen your friends go through it. Financial problems, illnesses, accidents, loss of work, divorces, etc., etc., etc. This is the time in life where karma comes into action. And it's showing right there in the arms because we must learn to embrace the karma. We must learn to receive it without complaining. When we do that, we can negotiate. And karma is absolutely negotiable. Karma is not set in stone. There are karmas that are not negotiable. But for the most part, we can negotiate our karmas. For as long as we are serving others, for as long as we're working internally, we're constantly paying. And that is what the law is seeking, that we can make progress to higher levels of being. Of course, walking out of those ages of 42 to 49, as we get to the ages of 49 to 56, we are under the influence of Archangel Zachariel, which we see in the head of this Tetragrammaton. And Zachariel, the name of Zachariel means the great man who guards the well of the wisdom of God. Zachariel will give you, us, each and every one of us, exactly what we deserve. That is why Zachariel always appears with a staff of patriarchs, and he appears with an imperator. An imperator is a sphere of gold or diamonds that has a cross in it. That is the gift of Zacariel to the man who works. So we embrace our karmas. We work on our vocation. We serve and sacrifice for others. By the time that we get between 49 and 56, Zacariel rewards us in life with many great things. But those who abuse their life, those who do not care, at the moment of receiving that gift, that reward, Zacariel will hand them over the staff of the beggars. That's all they get. And we have seen many of our friends experience this. We see some men who get to the age of 54, 55, close to becoming a senior citizen. And suddenly they look back and subconsciously they realize that their life has not been as fruitful as it could have been. And rather than taking the lessons, they subconsciously want to go back and relive the life. Like go back and restart at the level of Michael when they were in their 20s. And so we see many men in their 50s and they will dye their hair jet black. And they will buy a sports car and they will wear clothes that are clothes suitable of a teenager. And they will try to find a girlfriend that is also in her young 20s, trying subconsciously to relive that life that has already gone by. When they speak, people don't hear. They say things and they have a voice, but it's like the words do not have an effect. Many people have referred to that as the person is invisible in the room. People just don't care what they're saying because there is no power behind the sexual creative energy. It has been drained. It has been wasted. Last, from the age of 57 and from there on, we are considered senior citizens, socially, elders in terms of life. And we are then governed by Archangel Orifiel, who is the angel of death. Notice that Orifiel is here on the feet of the Tetragrammaton. This implies that as we walk life, we must walk the path of life as if it were the path of initiation. That in every step that we take, we must die within so that the new can flourish. From the age of 57, and from there on, we continue walking with the hand of Orifiel. And what that means is that we must make ourselves ready for that transition. Governed by the itoklanos principle that Mother Nature will take away our life at any moment. If you're fortunate enough to get to those ages, well, we know that our life can go away at any moment. And we must make the best of it. We must prepare things so that those who we leave behind, that they don't have to deal with problems and other issues because of our responsibilities. No. We must enable a good transition that minimizes their suffering as well. So notice how we see here the 7 cosmo creators influencing the life of man. So for all purposes, that right there is a map that we should embrace in our internal development. Notice the symbols of alchemy. On his left hand, we see the Holy Grail. On his feet, we see the sword. The sword is always a symbol of the man. It is also a symbol of the sexual libido, but it is also a symbol of willpower. The way that that sword is set, if this man were to bend forward and grab it, he would be able to grab it with his right hand. You see it? And as he does so, he then can project that willpower of the innermost. The Holy Grail is in his left hand because the left hand is the one that received. Just like the Buddha sits under the tree of illumination holding on to his cup. Cup is open, but it's always pointing upwards, waiting to receive that wisdom. That is why that Holy Grail is there. And that Holy Grail is also a symbol of the woman. So in terms of the inner work, alchemical work, notice that the man at the level of the feet with the sword, the man stands at the edge of the earth, and the woman next to the eyes of the Father, she stands at the edge of heaven. The woman For the man is his salvation, and the man for the woman, he offers her protection. That Holy Grail right there is not only a symbol of the ability that we must develop inside to receive, but also that Holy Grail is the one that carries the wine of the Spirit. We must take the waters of the personality, and through that caduceus of Mercury, through the work involved in that, we must transmute those waters of the personality into the wine of the Spirit. And so that is why we see those symbols of alchemy right there. Those two things symbolize the work in the ninth sphere. On his left, we also see the staff of the patriarchs. That staff of wisdom is the staff that the master, the adept, uses to officiate. And that is a cane of 7 knots. That cane, again, is a symbol of the spine. And the 7 knots in that cane are a symbol of the 7 chakras in the astral body. Of course, those 7 chakras cannot exist by themselves. So we have 3 spheres on top of that staff. Those 3 spheres are the 3 atoms of the Father. The atom of the Father, the atom of the Son. Remember, the atom of the Father corresponds to the brain. The atom of the Son corresponds to the pituitary gland. And the atom of the Holy Spirit corresponds to the pineal gland. They're all in the head. So here we have another representation of man, but this is a symbol of power and how the perfect man officiates in life. So if we have the staff on this side, on the right hand side we also have the seal of Solomon. And here we see the upper triangle, the triangle pointing upwards as a symbol of fire, the triangle pointing downwards as a symbol of water, all enclosed in a circle, because this is work that is entirely, of course, sexual in nature, as masculine and feminine principles. The work with water, fire, and spirit, that is the great secret behind the great arcanum. That is why the mantra is I-A-O. Ignis, that is fire, aqua, that is water, and origo, that is the spirit. The triangle that points downward also symbolizes the forces that come from the heavens. If I bring your attention to the image that we have on the left hand of the screen, this is an image that Eliphas Lévi offers in his book on high magic. And notice that the triangle that points downward symbolizes the forces that descend from the heavens. Those forces that descend from the heavens are known as abrusdonis. The triangle that is pointing upwards shows the forces that rise from the earth. Notice that at the bottom of that image, we see a circle that has a cross embedded in it. That is the sphere of Malkut. That is the realm of substance. That's where we are today. There's the earth, also the philosophical earth. These forces that come from below are known as helkdonis. And when those forces converge in our heart, they liberate a substance that is sacred, that is called din. When we work in the elimination of our psychological aggregates, the sacrifice of observing, comprehending, and invoking the Divine Mother to eliminate those defects with the elimination of every aggregate, that din transforms and is released as askoken. And the askoken nourishes the earth. So we nourish ourselves from the earth nourishes itself from the askoken that we relieve. And notice that in this image of Levi, what we see is the sacred name of the Tetragrammaton. Yod, starting at the top, He in the first triangle, Yod He. In those triangles, we see Vav, and at the bottom sphere, we see He again. So Yod is masculine, Heve is a feminine principle, so Yod Heve or Yod Hava or Yahava, Jehovah, is this eternal, multiple principle that gives life to us. the eternal manifestation of those masculine and feminine forces. It is through that din that is created in us with those forces that come from above and below that we can bring perfection to the superior existential bodies of the being. But of course, to fabricate those bodies, we need of those alchemical symbols. The cup, that is a symbol of the woman, the sword, that is a symbol of the man, and as they come together, they form the cross. All right, so what do we have? Last are the 4 words of wisdom that are inscribed in the flaming star. Many of the flaming stars that are out there, those who have painfully crafted them, not knowing the Hebrew alphabet, they have broken these words. And so these words are not present. Rather than being Hebrew characters, there are some Hebrew characters and others that are just like a scribble. Lamentably, that is the circumstance. But if we start on the right arm, that is as you're looking at it on the left side, the first name that we see here is Yod-He, Vav-He, or Yahweh. That is the name of the unknowable. On the left arm, meaning on your right-hand side, we see Adam, or Adamah. This Adam is man. This is humanity. This is the primordial man. This is the state that we are seeking to achieve, to go back to those roots where we had open connection with the forces of the universe. Excuse me. Again, on the left-hand side, notice that on that ray that connects the right hand, meaning look at the left arm of the Tetragrammaton from looking at it from the front, connects the left hand with connects the right hand with the left foot. Right there, in that ray, what we see is a word called kafar. Kafar, kafer, is atonement. It is reconciliation. It's expiation. It is sacrifice. And the last word that we have here is called pachad. Pachad is the fear of God. It is not a fear in which you are scared. It is that fear that comes from you be standing at the presence of all that power. It is that internal impression that comes when we realize our nothingness compared with the majesty of the Father of all lights. That is what that reverence stands for. And if we were to put together these 4 characters to tell a story, it would say something like self-sacrifice and the veneration of the innermost will lead the true man into the plenitude of the Father. This is what these 4 characters state. And of course, that is just a very superficial interpretation. As you meditate on this, you will be able to get even more. And so, by looking at all those symbols, this is why Samael says that the flaming star is the sign of the Word made flesh. That this is the terrible star of the Magi, the blazing symbol of divine omnipotence, the ineffable sign of the Logos, the power of the Christ within us. All of this in such a small, compact talisman. So how can we use this? Well, before we go into that, let me tell you a little bit about antithetical symbols. Because many people, because of their fears, because of their many dogmas, because of what they have been taught, they tend to believe that the flaming star is a symbol, a sign of the devil. And I tell you right now, it is not. I mean, you have seen, it has the symbols of the 7 archangels. It has alchemical symbols. It shows the seal of Solomon. It has the eyes of the Father. It's all there. So it is not a sign of the devil. What is a sign of the devil is the shadow of the Tetragrammaton. If you take that star and you unfold it, where the head of the star is at the base, what you see there is the Sigil of Baphomet. And the flaming star and the Sigil of Baphomet, they are not the same. One, the Tetragrammaton, is spirit over matter. It is the divine force calling the soul to return back to it. The Baphomet is matter ruling over the spirit. It is the ego dominating. Those are two completely diametrically opposed circumstances. And this sigil of Baphomet first appeared in the works of a man called Stanislas de Guaitilla. He wrote a book titled The Key of Black Magic in the late 19th century. And notice that that Baphomet has some specific Hebrew characters written around it. Of course, the head of this Baphomet is at the bottom. It's on the feet. So we start reading from there. That first Hebrew character at the bottom is called Lamed. So Lamed, the letter L, helps spell Leviathan. And Leviathan is a serpent of chaos. It is the tempting serpent in the book of Genesis. Leviathan is an embodiment of chaos. So no, they are not the same thing. If you're carrying a pentagram like the Tetragrammaton on your neck, you can use that for protection. You can use that in works of magic. You can use that for illumination. If you're carrying this, and what you're carrying is a symbol that is bringing and invoking the forces of matter over the spirit, I mean, you cannot complain if your life is chaotic. If you tattoo that on your skin, you making that part of your philosophical earth, you cannot complain if the circumstances are so adverse. Some people will say, my life is perfect. Great. We always have to wait to that period between 42 and 49 so that we can see how perfect is our life. Very well. So we are very grateful to our friends in Glorian who provide. We sourced that image directly from them and from Wikipedia because that's where we got the Baphomet. So let's talk real quick about the esoteric pentagram in the Gnostic studies, because as you heard me say, you can use this for magic, you can use this for protection, you can use this for several other things. We want to tell you what that is. As you have seen, we have a blueprint for spiritual ascension. More on this in a minute, because I want to make sure that you walk out of here with your hands full. The 5 rays that make that star are expressions of the rune Sig. Those of you students at the intermediate and advanced levels, you know that the rune Sig is a lightning. So that lightning, as it bends, it creates the flaming star. Requires you to see it. You will see it. There are 5 elements associated with the Tetragrammaton. Of course, the 4 basic: water, earth, air, and fire, but there's also ether. Those 5 elements correspond to a ritual called the Pancatatva or the Penketetve ritual. And that Pancatatva ritual shows you how to work with those forces of nature so that you can nourish your philosophical earth and transform. Particularly with Maituna, which is the work with the ether. It's the work of the man with the woman. Now, this star is also recognized as the morning star. The morning star is Venus. And for the Aztecs, Venus is Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl is a manifestation of the Christ. Let me talk to you a little bit about why is it that this is a blueprint to enlightenment. Those of you, students at the intermediate level, advanced level, you have already seen the alchemical symbols. You have already seen the hints on what is known as the revolution of the consciousness. We see the map of the life of man traced in the star, and that is by the location and the significance of the 7 cosmo creators, those 7 archangels. We must learn to negotiate our karmas. I mean, we can be there, sit down through life, and just take it and pay it in suffering. Or we can invoke the forces of the archons of the law and, working through the innermost, ask to negotiate our karma. And I encourage everyone to negotiate your karma, but with a warning, because you will remember that the law will always demand that you pay. If you don't have enough cosmic capital so that you can negotiate and trade that cosmic capital so that you don't suffer those karmas, then you have no other option than working internally on yourself to achieve higher levels of being and sacrifice for others. If you do not do that, the law will demand payment, and the payment always comes at the expense of suffering. So negotiate, but remember that you must pay. As part of this map in the life of man, our life must be in such a way that we receive the crown from Jupiter. That by the time we get to that age of 49 and 56, that Jupiter hands us the staff of wisdom. That he gives us the imperator. That he rewards us for a good job in life, for making the right spiritual progress, for sacrifice and working for others. And of course, right there, we see Orifiel, the angel of death, on the feet of Tetragrammaton. We must remember that we must live life as a path of initiation. Everything counts. Even our thoughts, when we are in the privacy of our own home, where nobody sees us, that counts. Must be right action, right thought, right sentiment, consistently. The blueprint to enlightenment is here because here we receive the mystery of the great work. The mystery is here. Samael unveils it. We see the sword, we see the cup, we see the staff of wisdom, we see the caduceus of Mercury. It is all speaking about transmuting the lead of the personality into the gold of the spirit. It is speaking about that work between a man and a woman, together united, singing the sacred words, and working without spilling the cup of Hermes. That is the key of the work. And that is here. And also, of course, the blueprint that has to do with how is it that we revolutionize our consciousness. Because when it comes to kafer or kafar, which is atonement, expiation, that requires self-sacrifice. We have to learn to see what we're doing, see how we're thinking, see how we are feeling in front of all these circumstances, and find out, why am I thinking these inferior thoughts? Why is it that the people that I love, why is it that I am wishing them sometimes ill? Because there's an ego behind that. We have to observe ourselves and say, why is it that even though I say this person is my friend, why is it that I speak bad about them? Why is it that I am keeping secrets from them? Why is it that I am behaving in ways that I am like dissimulating some things, but I am not being authentic? That is because there are egos behind that. We must observe that, comprehend them with no judgment, with no objections. We must see them, see ourselves as we are, and invoke of the power of our Divine Mother so that she can eliminate it. And when we do that, we start revolutionizing our consciousness. We die within, and because there is no vacuum possible in creation, no defect allows for the manifestation of a virtue. And of course, remember that to venerate the innermost, we must follow the will of the Father. This is how that blueprint to enlightenment is there. As an instrument of protection, this Tetragrammaton will always ward off any dark, negative energies. And Samael says in his writings, he says, the 5-pointed star must be drawn with charcoal on the ground before which the columns of angels and demons tremble. So, if you're performing a work of magic, let's remember that the line between black magic and white magic is very thin. Every work that we do must be through the intervention of the innermost. Every work that we do, we must ask that it is granted according to the will of the law. The work that we do, we must ask that it is done in the name of the Christ, by the power of Christ, by the law of Christ. So that we serve as an instrument. If the law allows it, let it be. If not, we accept the decree of the law and we don't complain. But if we try to force it, like bind people and love potions and connect people and force relationships and punish people, that's all black magic. It is all black magic. So if we're doing works of white magic and we want to protect the room, the precinct, we can always trace the Tetragrammaton with charcoal on the floor. How do we do that? It says, the upper vertex of the star, the eyes, the sign of Jupiter, shall face inward. They must be pointing into the room. And the 2 feet, the 2 lower angles of the star, should be towards the door. So if you were a tenebrous one walking in, all of a sudden you would come across that tetragrammaton that is an emanation of light. You will not come in. Okay? That is how we do it. If you don't have charcoal and what you have is a sticker, if you have a picture, you can put it right there at the threshold and it keeps all of those dark entities away. It is super powerful. You can also work with the flaming star in meditation. If you're going to meditate, you're going to assume an asana, a posture, which you lay flat on your back. You spread your legs, you open your arms, and you make sure that when you do that, your head is pointing to the magnetic north or facing east. And then, as you embody that flaming star, those tenebrous entities, those negative forces, they go like, oh, they don't want anything to deal with it. It's a beautiful tool for meditation as well. And as we are doing works of magic, sometimes that we find ourselves working with elemental magic, invoking the archangels, and in works of theurgy, we want to create a magic circle around us. That magic circle, Samael says, is a circle of light. We don't have to become fanatical and think that there are flames or lasers or other things that people want to visualize. No, this is a circle of white light. And we invoke that circle. We invoke to manifest the power of the Tetragrammaton with the mantra Elion, Melion, Tetragrammaton. For those of you who have not heard that mantra before, it sounds something like this. Elion, Melion, Tetragrammaton. And when you bring your imagination and your willpower together, you can see that circle of light materializing and that light keeping you right there, protected. And in times of danger, any moment you may be facing a dangerous, adverse circumstance, you can always invoke of the light of the Tetragrammaton with the mantra Klim Krishnaya. Klim Krishnaya Govindaya Gopihana Vaya Vaya Swaha. Those are the 5 points of the Tetragrammaton. Klim Krishnaya Govindaya Gopihana Vaya Vaya Swaha. All right, so let's start wrapping this up. We have learned today, we have seen that the pentagram is a radiant symbol of divine light. We see the embodiment of Yahweh and the balance of the cosmic forces within it. And the nature of the pentagram, like everything else, is dual. Let's remember that the principle of polarity crystallized the moment that the Ancient of Days came to be. Since that moment, at the crown of the tree of life, we have a principle of duality, of polarity. So this dual nature of the pentagram, in it, we see initiation and mastery, and it can either guide you to illumination, or if you misuse it, it will create an imbalance in you. And Samael says it very clear. You walk into this, you walk out in either one of 2 ways, either an angel or a demon. This is why it's called the path of the blade. It requires significant effort. As a key of power, it does not matter if it is in Hermetic science, magic, Gnosticism, etc. This flaming star is always a representation of forces of creation, of willpower, divine manifestation, and it unlocks the way to superior levels of being. This flaming star is a tool of protection. It has the keys for you to exercise transformation, to awaken your consciousness and reflect within you the union between matter and spirit. So as we move on, Please know that this flaming star, it is more than a symbol. It is a living force within us, and it is calling us to live life with strength, as in Om, sea fuerza, self-realization, and of course, to live life as a path of initiation. We used all those sources to be able to put this material together for you today, but this is what we wanted to share. Dear friends, thank you everyone for joining us this week. This has been the light of the Tetragrammaton. To everyone, have a wonderful week. May all beings be happy.